Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Evil Geniuses Bleed Blue podcast. Let me move my camera here for a bit. Yeah, this is the podcast where I talk about everything Evil Geniuses, except for this episode where I'm specifically going to focus in on the Counter-Strike team. And I made this decision because, um, frankly, there's not a whole lot going on in the other esports as of right now. Dota 2, the Lima Major ended. I can't remember if I spoke about that, but they ended up losing to that Shopify Rebellion team, which is the old EG players. I think I mentioned that before in one of the previous episodes. It's been a while, guys. Last week, I didn't do an episode, obviously, because I actually had vacation. I went to go visit some very old friends of mine that live in California, so I was not able to record an episode, um, and so that's why there was no episode last week. Um, and but other than that, right? I mean, so the Dota 2 team, not really a whole lot has changed regarding that situation. There's been actually the only thing I can think of from the Dota 2 side is there was a report by Richard Lewis about one of the Dota 2 players essentially, is suing Evil Geniuses due to some type of fraudulent contract. Um, I recommend reading the article. You can go look it up. Go to Richard Lewis's Twitter or to his Substack. Follow his Substack. And you can take a look at that article. I highly recommend reading it if you're interested. It's just another black mark against evil geniuses and their upper management, and showing that there's scummy people who will do anything to get you know, uh, make a cheap deal, that benefits them to a ridiculously unfair degree. It seems very strange for an organization that is backed by the amount of money that they're backed by, right? I mean, when you get a sponsorship deal with Chevron, you'd like to think that they'd be willing to spend the money, but they seem like they want to be as cheap as possible, but still somewhat relevant. Not really the case in the CSGO scene, obviously, but in the other esports, they try to stay as relevant as possible while minimizing their expenses. And while that's not inherently a bad thing, it it definitely you can definitely tell that there's more of a um, how do I phrase this? More of a priority for spending as little as possible rather than winning. Um, but enough of that. I've already gone very much in depth into my issues with Evil Geniuses as an organization. If you want to listen to those things, go look at the previous episodes of the podcast. I've extensively covered it over and over and over again every single week. And Yeah, that's my little tidbit on that for this week, I guess. But I highly recommend if you want to listen to those things, go to the previous episodes. I hope more things come out, and I hope more um, reports are made criticizing this organization so that hopefully things can change for the better in the future. Um, with that being said, that's Dota 2. Um, as for Valorant, the new Americas League doesn't start until April 1st or something like that. So it's going to start in roughly 2 weeks or so. So not really too much to talk about there. Um, and then League of Legends, the team has just been terrible. They've lost, I think they lost like 4 games or something in a row. I haven't been able to keep up with the games. Obviously, I was on vacation and whatnot, and just other stuff going on with my personal life. But I know that the team has very much struggled. Jojo Pion got sick. They had to play away from the studio for a little bit, which kind of surprises me that they're still doing that. Since COVID is so far removed, at least at this point, it seems like no other esport is doing that, but still happens in League of Legends for some reason. Um, but yeah, it's just been terrible for League of Legends team. But yeah, so I just wanted to focus on the Counter Strike team because I feel like I haven't done much content around the Counter Strike team recently, and I figured there were things that people would love to talk about, specifically with roster changes, which we'll get to, and that's going to be what the majority of this episode is going to be talking about because I think that's where everyone's at this point is Are there going to be roster changes? What are those roster changes going to look like? Everyone seems to have an opinion on what they want the roster to look like, and by the way, they're almost all different answers. I don't think I've seen two people agree on a player lineup for this team. Um, and to be honest with you, I don't know that there's a surefire way for you to conclude that one roster would be the best. Honestly, I mean, I think I have the solution for what would, in theory, be the best, but it's not something EG would do, and it's not necessarily naming specific players. It's more so the idea of just saying, "Fuck, uh, let's just sign in a completely international team and go that way." I think that would be the best chance of having the best roster. Um, but EG's not going to do that. They're going to try to stick, or at least in theory, they're going to try to stick to their being a North American team. Um, they seem pretty adamant on that. So I don't expect that change to happen. It's just, you know, it's an idea. Um, so I think without further ado, I think it's best if we just take a step back and instead of just delving straight into the roster changes, I think it would be best to kind of talk about, you know, what were the expectations or really what was going on at EPL? What were some of the things that I saw from EPL? Expectations, I guess, how the team played. I'm not going to go into all the maps. I'm not going to go into in depth on the series or anything like that. But just kind of because I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's worth it right now. The team's not in a state where it's fair or even remotely productive, I guess is the best way to put it. To delve in depth into their map pool and stuff like that. The team is just not in a good mental place, or at least they weren't at EPL. That much was made abundantly clear. Um, so, as I'm literally talking about EPL, let's just change the topic. Um, let's go with ESL Pro League. Is it 17, I believe? Yeah. So let's talk about ESL Pro League, right? Um, so like I was saying before, um, the team was not in a good mental state going into this event. Um, they had just bombed out of multiple. They just bombed out of the major, the major qualifier, um, or rather the qualifier for the major qualifier. Um, they bombed out of that like 3 days or so before um, going to Malta and playing in ESL Pro League. They were playing in Group A, which I think is quite unfortunate. I think maybe you know, if there had been more time for EG to just kind of decompress, right? Pro League is a long event, so I think it would have been extremely beneficial for them to have been in one of the later groups, like Team Liquid was, or like ATK was. Even Complexity, I think Complexity is like what, Group B? Yeah, I mean, even being in Group B is a help, is a big help. EG definitely drew the short straw on what group they were selected for Pro League. I mention that because I think people look at the Pro League results and obviously they're terrible. Um, but it's not just, you can't just look at these results at face value and not pay attention to the context surrounding it. These players and coach, obviously, and coaches, I should say, obviously experiencing probably the worst result of their entire career. I can't imagine they will have a result worse than this unless they join, worse teams. Um, You know what I mean? Not qualifying for the major qualifier is insane. Um, that's actually in North America. That's insane. Um, and so only having that 3 day period to go to Malta and then have to play against Cloud9, um, guys, it was never going to go well. And I was trying to be optimistic. I even said before the game against Cloud9 that EG might have a punter's chance if potentially, look, Cloud9 was not looking good going into ESL Pro League Season 17. They looked very bad with Buster joining the roster. It did not look good at all. And so there was some hope that maybe EG just plays completely loose Counter Strike, just pressures off, right? You didn't qualify for the major. This event, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but this event would have been like a step for preparing for the major. If you're not going to the major, I'm not saying Pro League doesn't matter. It obviously does, but certainly the pressure, maybe you might play with a little bit less pressure on your shoulders to, uh, to perform, I guess. It's like you've already sunk so low that you might as well just try to play to have fun, try to play loose, just try to play a different type of Counter Strike. Obviously, I think it was quite clear after the qualifier for the major qualifier results that this roster was not going to stay together. Um, we'll get to that later, obviously, but this roster it can't stay together at this point, and it's not necessarily because these group of players didn't mesh. I think it has more to do with just the overwhelming amount of horrible negative energy and just all the horrible things that came out about the organization over this very brief 3-month span, guys. I mean, when did EG lose? Let's see. When did EG play their game against Eternal Fire? The 23rd of February. Guys, do you guys not understand how short of a time frame this whole collapse has been? From EG beating Heroic in that best of 3 to losing against, well, I guess this was Eternal Fire. So when did they play IHC? They played IHC on the 25th of February. The amount of time, guys, between beating Heroic and losing to IHC in Pro League and not qualifying for the major and whatnot literally happened within maybe just, if I'm being generous, a little bit over a month time frame. Do you guys not understand how insane that is? The amount of shit that these players went through in the span of a fucking month is probably the worst I'll just say it. It's the worst I've seen from like any players have to go through from any organization ever in a 1 month time frame. The amount of scrutiny, criticism that not only the players got, but mainly the organization, and then the organization transferred that pressure to the players to qualify for the major. I mean, guys, unbelievable. Unbelievable the amount of shit they had to deal with in this time frame. And so I don't think this is one of those where roster moves needed to be made because the team was. I mean, don't get me wrong, the team was playing bad, obviously. The whole team was playing bad, not just HexT, not just Wiz, guys. I'll get to that later. But I'm tired of people just putting it on them. The whole team is playing bad. It's not just those two. Arguably, yeah, they are the worst two. By the way, they're the youngest two. Um, to tier 1 level Counter Strike. I don't know. It's insane what they've had to go through, and I don't know. I was hoping that maybe they would play with a little bit more just fuck it attitude. Fuck it, we ball, I guess, as the kids say. And thinking that maybe uh, they'd pull off an upset somewhere, but once they got 2-0'd by Cloud9 in pretty convincing fashion, guys, 16-5, 16-4, it was pretty fucking ugly to watch. I didn't even watch the whole series because I can't take watching them lose. It hurts so bad. I watched most of it, to be fair. I mean, I watched up until probably, I don't know, a little bit past half time in Mirage, and I couldn't take it anymore. Um, yeah, Eternal Fire was no better, really. I mean, a 16-6, a 16-14, IHC, they won a map, but I mean, I don't know, just it sucked. It sucked to watch. IHC obviously made that funny remark about uh, it's nothing, not a special win because it's EG. They're not that good. Um, yeah, brutal, just really, really brutal. Um, and Yeah, Pro League didn't go well, guys. Pro League went very, very poorly. Not unexpected, um, frankly, with just like I even knew like EG is a better team, or they should be a better team than like IHC. Like EG should not go last place in their group. But when you've just gone literally not even a week before having your worst result of your career being memed on by everybody, horrible things coming out about your organization that you work for, just back to back to back to back to back, nonstop. Like, I'm sorry, I can't be surprised. Like, I'm not surprised. And I don't even know how much blame you can put on them for it. I mean, obviously, they're in the server, they have to perform. I get that. But, I mean, come on. If they had beat IHC and they had lost to Fnatic, people would be saying this the same criticism. It wouldn't have mattered. If they got last place or second to last place, nobody would have cared. You know, um, it's quite clear moves need to be made because not because necessarily again the players don't have the potential to work together and be a good team. It's more so just because the energy around this team just has to be so fucking low. Not that they don't like each other or that there's like some type of emotional turmoil in the team. It's nothing like that. It's just sometimes, guys, you have to make moves for the sake of changing things and for making things, just creating a new environment for the sake of just saying, look, that was before, that was the past. We're not bringing that into this new team, right? So you get new players, you change things up, right? Um, and so that's probably going to happen. In fact, as I'll get to, excuse me, as I'll get to in a second, there's been some news. Now, I think it's fair to say let's leave Pro League for now. Or not for now. Let's leave Pro League for good. And let's move on to some of the roster moves that have been rumored or that people have been talking about as saying that they want to happen. Um, One of the big ones is Junior coming into the team for Wiz. And I'm just gonna start with Junior for now. My thoughts on Junior, right? So this has been one that I've pretty much just basically seen unanimously everybody saying Junior should be on the team and they should replace Wiz. And this is why I don't necessarily agree with this opinion. Um, Look, as I said before in previous episodes, I knew Junior was going to join EG and was going to essentially dominate the tier 2 scene. He does it every time. He's very consistent at it. He pretty much is just he's in a weird gray area where he's too good to be in tier 2 North America, but for some reason can never seem to make it in tier 1 Counter-Strike. He just fumbles every single time. Never looks good. Well, I don't want to say that, but he's very inconsistent. He'll have an incredible game and then he'll have a horrible game. And I understand, it's just he's not consistent. He's not consistent. He'll hit the crazy shot and miss the easy one. That's just who he is. Um, and look, I don't know. I have nothing against the guy personally. Like, if he ends up joining the main roster and he does better than Wiz by some distance, right? And it's clear that, yeah, look, he was ready. This is for some reason this is Junior's time. This is his moment. Like, he's actually gonna make it in tier 1. Sure, but if he wasn't able to do it on teams like Furia and Complexity, I don't see how being on the worst team of his entire career playing tier 1 teams is going to somehow make him successful. Um, doesn't make sense to me. And to me, what I got frustrated with when people talk about Junior joining even just EG Black, I was not happy that he joined EG Black. And people were very confused about that. And my logic is I don't like that he joined EG Black because, in my opinion, the whole point of the Blueprint project is to develop young talent. And there is nothing for Junior to develop on EG Black, right? You might make the argument that, well, Yes, Junior has struggled to make it in Tier 1 CS, but that's exactly why we're picking him in the Blueprint project is to develop him so that if to try to see if he can be that player in Tier 1. The only problem I have with that argument is that he's not playing against Tier 1 competition because he's not on the main roster. He's not on the main roster. He's playing Tier 2 teams. If you truly meant that you wanted to develop Junior as a player, you would have put him immediately on the main roster, and you didn't do that. Why didn't you do that? Because you picked Wiz. And I'm not saying that that's a wrong decision. I'm just saying, why is Junior actually here? Is it just to make EG Black look better? Is it just for EG Black to potentially win ECL so that a bunch of fucking EG executives can claim that their Blueprint project is a success because they won ECL, even though that has literally nothing to do with the project? Like, I just don't get it. In my opinion, it would have made more sense to try to pick up a younger Opper who potentially, I don't know, um, doesn't have a whole lot of experience at playing tier one, playing in just an organization in general, a player with massive amounts of potential, right? There are oppers in that space. Cynic, I believe, is an opper. Woohoo, I'm not sure where he is now, but I know he's an opper. I understand the Timberman team is a little bit controversial. Well, not a little bit, very controversial. But Dare is a fantastic player, at least individually. And look, it's the same thing with Clasia. Like he was seen as toxic, but like if you want to be developing young talent, like the talent is there. The talent is there. Prove to me that you're developing that talent. And that's the problem with this blueprint project in general, is that I just don't really see them developing the talent. I see them signing players that are already good enough to be on the main roster. That to me isn't developing talent. That's just signing the best players in North America so you don't have to play against them, and then claiming that you develop them when you move them into the main roster, when in reality there's really not much that they're doing to get better. It's just they were already good enough, right? Like I don't believe that George's time on EG Black is developing him as a player to some insane degree that he wouldn't be able to do on Nouns. Like I think Nouns potentially even could have been a better opportunity for him because he would be what playing in the major qualifier. Um, so to me, it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense what they're doing with this. Um, so that's the biggest reason why I didn't understand the junior pickup for EG Black, was just because I felt like if you're going to develop this player, look, what he needs is tier one competition. You know, he isn't struggling in tier two. He's just going to smurf and develop more bad habits if he plays in tier two. What he needs to play against is tier one teams. So, what is the point of putting him on EG Black and him smurfing? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Um, so yeah, just don't really understand that. And guys, look, by the way, he has been smurfing. Like he has been fucking dominant for this team. Looking at his stats now, I mean, it's just consistently destroying teams. Um, you know, incredible rating, dominating the server. You know, he deserves it. But again, I question whether or not he'll make it. And the reason why I don't think, because EG made the decision in January to um they made the decision in January to pick up Wiz and put him on the main roster. I don't think it's fair to replace Wiz with Junior yet. And here's why. Look, potentially Junior could be a better player than Wiz in playing against tier one teams. It's possible. I'll accept that. Um, Not that it would be that hard to do at the moment. And I say that because again, Look at what look at out of all the players on Evil Geniuses, which player has suffered the most from this whole experience? I guarantee you it's Wiz. It's got to be Wiz. If it's not Wiz, it's HexT. Um, and while I'm doing this, let's I'll just change the topic here to Wiz, right? No player has suffered more, in my opinion, in this last month than Wiz. Talk about a fucking horrible way to get introduced to Tier 1 Counter Strike. I mean, the dude got put into the team seemingly out of nowhere, right before Blast for Cirque. Still don't, to this day, I still don't understand if that was a decision, when that decision was made. When was it decided that Cirque was going to step down and Wiz was going to join the main team? I don't understand when that decision was made. It seems ludicrous to me to make that decision seemingly so soon before Blast, um, when they had such a decent amount of time in the off season to make that decision. It just seems like a lack of competence, in my opinion. Um, but yeah, if you're Wiz, man, I mean, you barely got brought into the team. You're flying out to fucking Blast, playing with. I mean, you're familiar with Hex, but you're not familiar with basically any of the other players on the team, really. Um, you get there and you win against Heroic. Fantastic. And then it just goes to shit. And not only does it go to shit so bad where like the performances just get worse and worse and worse, but you're getting criticized because you're the opper. You're getting criticized because uh fucking people are making stupid memes like Wiz uh, Wiz Zywoo or whatever the fuck they were saying, like Wizwoo or whatever the fuck, and Wiz God and shit because you beat Heroic and now it's just, oh, Wiz is the best fucking, and so now you're just getting memed on and clowned on because you're not playing well, because the whole team's not playing well, and this shit's going on, and then the organization is taking hit left and right and left and right, and you're just sitting there like, okay, this is my life now. And then you go to the qualifier for the major qualifier, your first one on a big organization on the main team, and you fucking get into that shit and get battered. And not only do you get battered to the point where Kassad is making a fucking public bet and people are just clamoring to watch you lose in a qualifier for a major qualifier. And you're Wiz, playing the op, the most potentially the most impactful role in the game, right? A role where you are expected to perform because the gun is expensive and it has a lot of power with it. And so you are expected to perform. You are expected to be a top 2 player pretty much on your team every single game. That should be the goal because you're the opper. You can be the third best if the riflers are popping off, but the expectation is you got to be a top 2, at worst top 3 player on your team. Like, I don't know. You come into a team and you're just playing against Cadian and Zywoo and Device and fucking all these. I don't get it, man. Like, Wiz was put into such a horrible position joining this team. He must have had the hardest month ever of his entire life, probably. I don't want to listen. I don't know what goes on in his personal life, but I'm just saying, it's fucking hard, man. It's fucking hard. Um, I feel terrible, and in my opinion, people are just like already giving up on him. People are just like, ah, Wiz is shit. Kick him. He's terrible. He'll never make it. And it's like, dude, it's been 1 month. It's been 1 month of tier one competition. What North American guys? What North American opper in this day and age is gonna just waltz onto one of the worst teams in tier one, basically a fucking tier two at this point, tier three fucking NA team. But what North American opper is just gonna who has never played tier one Counter Strike before, never touched tier one Counter Strike before, North American opper guys, is gonna walk into an Evil Geniuses team and just blow your mind with 1.2 ratings everywhere. Who? Oh, that's right, you can't fucking name anybody, because it doesn't exist. And for all you dumb fucks screaming Junior, he's already played Tier 1 Counter-Strike, he doesn't qualify. And by the way, he wouldn't drop 1.2 ratings against Tier 1 teams. He hasn't done it. Not consistently. So it's just like, people are just acting like this guy is just done. And it just makes no sense. Like, how? How can you just witness and like it's the same people who just shit on EG and just talk about how fucking awful the team is and how the organization is scum and how, oh my god, oh dude, these players are being put under so much pressure, and then the next day they just turn around and just go, Wiz is shit and should be kicked from the roster. He'll never make it in tier 1 Counter-Strike as an opper. It's like, dude, did you not, like, do you not just realize all the shit you said before and how that just doesn't make sense to apply to Wiz now. Like, the dude has not been given enough time. And he's been put in the worst possible situation you could be in. Like, I just don't understand that. So that is why you, in my opinion, cannot replace Wiz yet. You can't. I mean, look, if you do, look, I'm not saying if here's what I'll say. Maybe it's not that you can't replace Wiz right now. It's more so you can't replace Wiz with another North American opera right now. If you replace Wiz with like a fucking European or I don't know, CIS opera who speaks English or a man too, right? By all means, go ahead. Go ahead. Do that. But a tier but a North American opera, guys, a North American opera. Really? Really? Because North America is just known for having just supreme operas, just god level operas, guys. Like if it's a choice between Junior and Wiz, give Wiz a couple extra fucking months to prove something, anything, or even just get some experience. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm crazy. But to me, it's just like, and I understand, oh, sports isn't fair. Roster moves happen and things aren't fair. Things don't go your way. But like, if you're EG, that's just like one of the scummiest things you could do. You know, promise this guy a step up onto the main roster, put him in the worst positions possible, and then just kick him the fuck out of the team a month later because you're not performing well enough. Meanwhile, the rest of the fucking team is just performing just as bad as you. Like, it's not like Wiz is playing so bad that like compared to the rest of his team that he just has to get kicked. It's like, dude, Wiz literally he's just been as bad as everybody else. Like he's just been as bad as everybody else. You know? Um that's just I don't know, I don't get it. It seems strange to me that everyone's just people are just convinced they get so convinced that players just will never make it after seeing what they look like on the EG main roster, and then they look at the EG black and white rosters and just pick out players and go like, well, they'll definitely be better. And it's like, how do you know that they're definitely going to be better? You have no fucking clue if they're definitely going to be better. The difference between Tier 2 NA and Tier 1 CS is so fucking drastic, and I can prove it to you when I talk about HexT. Which, speaking of the man, we're about to talk about him. Because, guys, there has been some news. And the news is that HexT is going to be essentially kicked off the main roster. And I think this was expected. I don't necessarily agree with it entirely in the sense of like, well, I don't know. I agree with it in the sense that like, yes, Hex has been statistically the worst player on the team. He just has been, and he has been for a while. Um, however, um, what I will say is, I think again, it's one of those situations where you put more context to it, and you start to realize pretty quickly that it's not as black and white as you think. Um, not to mention um, that the replacement is well, it's potentially refrezh. It's been reported by dust2.us. Um, Ryan wrote this piece, or I'm sorry, that's not necessarily entirely accurate. He did a report on this because Blix.gg did a report on this, where apparently there's been Evil Geniuses have a verbal agreement with refrezh to join the main roster. Now, as far as I'm concerned, Evil Genius's word means fuck all. So don't don't take that as this is a guarantee, um, because it very well might not be. In fact, I would I would what is it err on the side of caution and tend to not believe this until the move actually gets officially announced because EG's verbal agreement means fuck all. EG's word means fuck all. And if refrezh decides to talk further with the Evil Geniuses team, and spoiler, I doubt they've like changed the way they do interview process and shit. I'm sure refrezh, if he ends up wanting to join EG, is gonna have to fucking go through an interview process with like fucking every person in the fucking employment list of EG just to potentially get a fucking roster spot, and then get told multiple times, "Oh, we're in your plan. Yes, we're gonna sign you. Yes, we're gonna sign you," and then still deliberating it in the background, like, do we sign him? Do we not sign him? Whatever. Um, but so my thoughts on I'm gonna talk about HexT first, his time with EG, why I don't necessarily think it's the most fair thing in the world, the criticism he's been getting, um, and my thoughts on HexT, I guess. And I'll talk about HexT first, and then we'll discuss refrezh, and we'll discuss the roster move in general, and do I think it's a good idea, you know, from a gameplay perspective, and then also from a blueprint project or just overall the goals of EG type of perspective as well. So let's start off and talk about HexT. So HexT obviously has been struggling, guys. He's been struggling ever since he joined the team, but he has been a emotional bedrock, which is very honorable when you consider, again, how hard the past month must have been for him. Not only was he dealing with all the same pressures as Wiz, in terms of just all the scrutiny against the org, just the results getting poorer and poorer, everybody playing poorly, um, just just one disaster after another. But then on top of that, you consider, um, he had that personal situation where that report came out, um, about him being racist, in the past, and that EG didn't vet him properly, and he publicly apologized for it, and he had to take responsibility for that, which I very much commend. I think Hex is a really good person, a really good. He's someone I personally relate to in the sense of, and I'll just get that out of the way. Like, I am biased because you know, I'm roughly the same age as Hex, and so I try to put myself in his shoes, and I can't imagine being in the position he's in. I really can't. Um, and it's just crazy to me. And I don't mean that from like oh, it's crazy to me that he could be flying around the world playing tier one Counter Strike. It's the opposite. It's more like I can't believe a kid is going through all this shit. It's fucking insane. Um, Not only that, Nicole did never make a public tweet, didn't make a statement, didn't say anything. Nobody from EG upper management said anything to protect Hex, didn't say anything about, hey, I vouch for him, hey this, or hey this, or hey that. Nothing, absolutely nothing came out, um, in terms of defending him, not even really defending him, but I mean more so defending him in the sense of being like, hey, look, I can vouch for his character. Like, look, he might have made a mistake when he was younger, but it's not who he is now, and we have full faith in supporting him. Even just a simple message like that I literally just came up with off the top of my fucking head could have been tweeted, could have been something that someone in upper management could have said. They just didn't say anything. They didn't care. Um, and so to me, that's fucked up. That's really fucked up. Um, I can't imagine being in his parents' position and whatnot. I bet it's been really hard this past month or so. Seeing all the stuff that's happened. I know his parents. I think they follow. I'm pretty sure they follow everything he does. I've on occasion seen them in like on Twitter, I think, or maybe it was Twitch chat. I don't fucking remember. Um, Point being, I feel bad for the guy. I do. Um, Look, he was the worst player on the team the first for the first for the end of last year, right? Which was expected. Um, you know, New player, super young, right? Um, Playing the entry position for the most part. Um, Roles are pretty fluid these days, but that was kind of his job. Was a space creator, kind of, and an emotional leader for the team in terms of just cracking jokes. All the guys on EG are pretty quiet. Automatic's a pretty quiet guy. That Breezy's a super quiet guy. Cirque at the time, very quiet guy. Um, Nealon doesn't seem like he's. I mean, he laughs and he jokes. I feel like, but he's not like an outspoken person, the kind of person who just is constantly saying, talking and just trying to get, just crack jokes all the time. Like, he's just, seems to be a pretty chill person. So you needed that energy out of Hext, right? You needed somebody to bring some energy into the team. Um, and so that was really fun, right? Um, and I kind of hate the fact that people just they only related to, oh well, Hex was a great addition to the team because of his emotional energy that he brought. It's like, yes, guys, yes, he did do that, and yes, he was the worst performer, but he did other things that he was trying to get better as a player too. Like, it's not like he was just like, I don't know. He was trying to create space. I don't know. I feel so fucking rude when I read shit like he got brought onto the roster and he immediately made an impact by being the emotional leader for the team, or like some like emotional spark for the team. And it's like, yeah, it's true, but like, I don't know. You typically hear that phrase and you think, okay, here's some stats about him being, but no. Look, he was the worst player on the team end of last year. He just was. It was expected. Coming into this year, we were hoping that this was going to be where Hex takes a step, right? He had mentioned in the previous year that, you know, um, there was a lot more decision making involved with playing in Tier One Counter Strike, and that it was something he was going to have to get used to, and that's completely understandable. I think, well, I'll get to that in a second, but he just said there's a big jump, right? And so going into this year, I was thinking, okay, Hex is going to have a little bit more time. He's used to his roles, so coming into this year, this should be a step up year for him, right? He should be performing a little bit better, and individually be able to carry his own weight. Then we find out that Hex's role has been changed, and not only has it been changed, it's not like it got changed a little bit. It's not like he went from being the second man in to being the third man in. No, 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 no. He went from being like one of the point men into like the first guy in a bomb site to being the lurk on the opposite side of the map. You can't get as a rifler more of a different role change than that. Um, and for a little bit, he was doing relatively well. I think he was actually the highest performing player at Blast at the beginning of the year, if I remember that correctly. I was talking to Curran about it, and we were joking about it because I was telling him, "Hey, guess who the best performer was?" And I'm pretty sure it was HexT. Um, but at this point in the season, he has been the worst performer. Um, and a lot of people just look at it and go, "Well, he's been here for almost a year, and he hasn't gotten better." And to me, I just don't think it's that clear cut. His role got completely changed. Has, the whole team, the organization, everything has just gone to shit in the past month. I just don't think it's fair that people just add this month in without any of the context and just go like, well, yeah, but look, they've been shit. And it's like, yeah, they have been shit, but like, there's fucking context to this. Like, you can't just get rid of the context, look at the result, and be like, okay, well, clearly this player is not good enough and will never make it. It's like, what the fuck is that? Like, how were they supposed to succeed? Like, what was Hex supposed to do to succeed? How was he ever going to succeed on this fucking team? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Um, so yeah, I feel like Hex has kind of gotten a bum deal out of this whole thing. He got a complete role change. Essentially, it's like starting back from square one to some degree. At the beginning of the year, and it just went to shit. And so here's where I'm gonna prove, right, that the gap between tier 2 NA and tier 1 CS is just so fucking drastic. Like, people seem to forget that we lost our whole fucking like up and coming, like, hey, these are the tier 2 stars of NA. Like, we lost all those guys, right? Like the Hex, the Hex and the George and Classia and all these other guys that have been performing pretty well. Like, they were like the third in line back when we had a tier 2 scene. Like, they were the guys who were like, oh yeah, and like those guys will get better in a couple years, and eventually they'll get there. But now all of a sudden they are the next options. They are the second options that have to get moved up and play tier 1 Counter Strike. Like, it has not been an easy journey for these players, right? And here's to me proof, because what all of you people do, not everyone obviously, but you know who you are. What I see so often is just, hey, X player on EG Black is dropping a 1.3 rating against tier 2 North American teams, and so therefore X rifler, this rifler or whatever, should just replace Hext because he would be instantly an upgrade in every way because Hext is performing like shit on the main roster. And it's like, can you just not see how fucking stupid that is? Can you not see how dumb that sounds? And let me prove it to you. Hext, right? Who I have just been hearing nonstop. Oh, I don't really like Hext. Oh, I don't think Hext is good enough. Hext doesn't have the potential to play Tier 1 Counter Strike. Hext is terrible. Blah, 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 blah. Hext went to go back to EG Black. He's been playing for EG Black for the past, I don't know, less than a week, roughly a week. He's played a total of, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games. Now, granted, one of those games was against some team called DNA, which is some Chinese team that I've never heard of before that are probably not very good. But the rest of the games have been against pretty good fucking NA opposition. Okay, Take Flight. I don't know. Are they in? Are they in? They're not. Are they in the Challenger League? I don't think so. But they're in advanced. They're in advanced. I think they're very close to. They beat Limitless. Limitless is a you know is a ECL team. So look, again, not the top of the top, but they're a good team. They got some pretty talented players on their roster. Um, so they played Take Flight. They played Detonate. That's an ECL team. They played Strife. That's a very good ECL team. That's Stamina's team. And yeah, so they've been playing a couple teams, right? In the let's see, what did I say? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games. That in the 8 games Hext has played since rejoining EG Black in replace of Stanislaw, he has been fucking nuclear in 7 of 8 games. The only game he performed poorly on was his first game on Ancient against Strife, where he had a .89 rating and went 13 and 17 on Ancient. Other than that, other than that, this is what he has done. 1.56 rating against Strife in the next map, 18 and 13 plus 5. DNA 1.48 rating, 17 and 10. Take Flight in that, I assume this was a best of 3. They 2-0'd them, I assume, it looks like. And Take Flight, his ratings were 1.35 and 1.52. Dropped on Inferno, he went 26 and 19. Against Detonate, an ECL team, 1.6 rating and 1.37 rating. First map, that 1.6 rating, 24 and 12 on Anubis, and then Overpass, 21 and 19, 1.37 rating. And then most recently, he played against Take Flight, literally today when I'm recording this, and he dropped a 1.44 rating, went 20 and 14 on Inferno. The guy has been destroying them, tier 2 NA players. Can you not fucking see? Can you not fucking see? By the way, just join the fucking team. Just rejoin the team. Like, I understand he's going back to Walco, and actually, now that I think about it, Walco might be the only player that is on that roster that was on that roster when he was on it originally at this point. So, not even like he's going to that familiar of a team. It's not like he's just going back to the old team he was on. It's not necessarily the same. It's not the same roster. Instant impact. Instantly one of the best players on the team. Been outperforming George. Like, it's just like I don't get it. Like, I don't get it, guys. Like, I just don't understand this like logic that Hext is just never gonna be good, and he just has no potential whatsoever at this point because he's been bad in tier 1 for like a year, playing under one of the most dysfunctional organizations I have ever seen, in its most dysfunctional period I have ever seen, and will probably ever see from any team ever again. Like, how can you possibly how can you possibly look at this and put all the context together and just be like, yeah, Hex is terrible, he'll never make it, please replace? Like, I understand he was always pretty much bound to get replaced, and I was assuming it would be by George, um, because he was just obviously the next person you'd move up from the Blueprint project as a rifler. Um, but it's one thing to say he should be replaced, or he should get replaced because we need something different for the team. We just need a new environment. He is the worst player statistically, so fuck it. But even then, it's just like, guys, like, I don't know. In terms of like, again, how the team chemistry works, it's like Hex was like a strong piece for the chemistry, the team chemistry and morale. Like, if you replace him by someone who's not as energetic and is cracking jokes and doing this and doing that, like, you're just gonna get into a really sour or not sour mood, but it's just always, I don't know, like there's not going to be enough energy in the team, and like you can't tell me that players aren't going to think like, a month after Hex is gone, going to be like, man, I kind of miss Hex cracking this joke or doing this or doing that. Like they will, because they're all a bunch of quiet people, and so they're going to miss that guy who you could always look to have energy. Like you're going to miss that. So I don't know. Like it just seems it's a fucked up situation, man. Like I don't really know that there's a best way to go in terms of like players to sign, which is why like I am about to criticize this whole like refresh move, but I don't really think it's like as clear cut as it sounds. Like it is very difficult, and I do think in terms of the roles, if Hex has been playing this right, this like lurker type role, refresh does fit that role. And so let's briefly touch on refresh before we talk about why I don't like this move. Spoiler. I don't like this move if it happens. Um, Mostly, it's not anything to do against refresh. It's mostly to do with the precedent or the logic behind the move. That's what I have a problem with. Not necessarily Refresh as a player. I think Refresh is a fantastic player. He's an incredible player, a top level player, a tier one caliber player, which is what I've been asking for. An international player who's of tier one caliber. I get that. I've been asking for that. Refresh fits that bill. Refresh has also been an in-game leader. He was an in-game leader for Sprout back when they obviously beat Evil Geniuses. I don't know why Refresh wants to join Evil Geniuses. That kind of boggles my mind after seeing all the shit that's been going on with the organization and whatnot. If he does want to join the team, it seems like it's one of those where it either has to be because maybe he played against EG when he played against EG in that IEM Katowice, he thought they were doing some interesting things, or maybe it was because um, I don't know, he just is having the logic of like, I need to do something completely different with my career, or maybe he's thinking, hey, fuck it, EG's so bad. If I make the team even remotely better, it'll raise my stock, and I might be able to go to a better team. Who knows? Maybe that's the logic. I have no idea. Maybe it's because he potentially knows Vorborg, and therefore they have a good relationship. They're both Danish, and maybe that's why. I don't fucking know the reason, right? I don't know the reason. It just does surprise me that anyone would want to join this organization, especially an international player like Refresh, who does hold serious value in my opinion. It seems kind of shocking that he'd want to go to EG after everything that's happened over the past month or so. But whatever. It looks like he's potentially joining the team. And you know, uh, look again, role wise, I think it's a good match in terms of what Hext has been doing and playing that lurker role. That's something that Refresh was doing on heroic. And so I think that does make sense for him. I'm trying to think. He did an interview a while back where he was talking about his preferred position. Hmm, I can't remember it, man, because like I'm trying to think. It was either lurker or it was entry frag, which I know is like again the complete two opposite extremes. But I don't know. Either way, whether he decides he wants to be an entry fragger or he decides he wants to be a lurker and a clutcher, which has always, in my opinion, been his strong suit, has been his clutching ability and being able to lurk. But either way, right? Like you know, that's basically the same thing Hex was doing. Um, he's just an upgrade on all sides, right? From that perspective, right? So I get that, and I like Refresh. He's a very good person from what I've seen, and I've really liked him. Thought he has a great attitude. Super. He's a hard worker. It looks like. I've always been a big fan of Refresh. So, look, in terms of him joining Evil Geniuses, I don't really have a problem with him joining the team. I think he's a good player. I think he's a fantastic player, actually. I think he's one of those guys that should have probably taken Zipnix's spot on Astralis, quite frankly. Um, but for some reason it hasn't really gone his way and whatnot. And he did the IGL thing on Sprout, but it looks like that's didn't really not something that he wants to continue with. And I think he just might want to do something completely different, which is cool. I respect it. I think it's a little strange going to EG of all places, but hey man, somehow I guess EG still has some pull in the scene. Um, but let me talk about why I don't like the move. So let's rename this maybe just straight up why I don't like the refresh move. And I'll do that. And we'll throw in a couple spaces. So this is why I don't like the refresh move, if it happens. The reason I don't like it, again, has nothing to do with refresh. I think he's an incredible player. He is a tier 1 caliber player. I really like him. I like his attitude. I like who he is as a person from what I've been able to, from what I've seen over the years or whatever. Young guy, great attitude, right? The whole bit. Incredible aim, great player. Has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with the precedence it sets, or what the precedence it should set for players that are on EG Black and EG White as riflers. Because while, I mean, I don't know, arguably the Wiz and Hex positions were up for debate for multiple players from EG Black and EG White, up for the taking, right? And to go sign refresh, it just feels like I don't know. It gives me th- so my farthest outtake about this move is it just feels very reminiscent of the ideology that EG seems to have in all their esports, where it's just sign the best players we can, but who are willing to be paid less. Because I can't imagine we're spending that much money on refresh. Um, he's a great player, but he was just on Sprout. Like I don't know, man. It just seems like a very like this seems like the kind of move you make when you're trying to sign a player who's good, but not a player who's incredible, right? Because you don't want to spend that kind of money. Um, Again, that's probably my farthest out take on this whole thing. It just seems very like cost savvy. But here's my bigger problem with it. My bigger problem with it is how this looks from a blueprint project perspective. To me, it was quite clear to me in my mind, I thought for sure George was joining the team. What has George what does George need to do to join this main roster if he doesn't get moved up now? Like in terms of roles, like I'm pretty sure George is a more passive player. I don't know. Like, doesn't it make sense for if Refresh is going to join the team as a lurker, then why wouldn't George be able to play something like that? Or I don't know, but like it just seems so weird to me. Like I just don't get it. And even if it's not George, there's other riflers that are showing potential. Like Momo. Like let me just be honest, guys. Like Momo has been good. He's been very good on EG White. Like he's been performing very well in the games they have played. He's an option, man. People just forget EG White exists and think that for some reason no player could move from EG White to the main roster, but like Pwn alone could have, and as far as I'm concerned, Momo is good enough too. At least from what he's shown. Um, it's just strange, man. It's just really strange, and I don't like it in the sense of just what kind of message does Refresh joining the team send to players like George and Momo and the other players on EG Black and EG White? It sends a message to them that we're it doesn't matter how well you perform in our teams. We're very willing to outsource to get other players. And to me it strikes a very weird like EG's playing the in-between game. Like they they won't go full international. They won't do that. But they still would rather get international players than their own players in their own academy system. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Either fucking take it international or keep it North American. Do one or the other. And I understand that Refresh joining the team technically means it's still a fucking North American team because you're keeping Wiz, and therefore you'll have 3 North American players. I get that. But what I'm saying is, you had options available on your North American teams. If you're really going to develop these players have nothing else to prove in Tier 2. What does George have to prove in Tier 2 North America? The dude went to a major qualifier and performed so fucking well on Nouns that EG signed him to EG Black. Like, the dude has nothing more to prove in Tier 2 NA. What can he possibly learn at this point? You are stunting his growth. It doesn't make sense to me. It does not make sense to me. And so it's just like a slap in the face to George. If I'm him, I'm sitting there like, why am I here? Like, this was supposed to be my move up, and now I'm getting screwed. And I have to sit here on EG Black for another fucking 6 months, maybe, until maybe they sign me to the team. Or they could always just outsource me if they find some European player that they like better. It just doesn't make sense. If I'm these players, I'm just pissed. And it's just it just doesn't make sense. It's not what the project is supposed to be. You know, the whole point of the project is to develop North American players. And quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned, I don't really see much development going on with these players, right? Like, who the fuck have they developed? I mean, maybe Walco's IGLing has gotten better, right? EG Black has been playing pretty damn well the past season and a half, season and maybe roughly 2 seasons, right? Like, EG Black has been playing very, very well, and so yeah, I'm sure Walco has developed as an in-game leader because of it. I'm sure of that, right? But like, obviously, Russian Stanislaw aren't fucking developing as players. They're already, you know, they've already won Tier 1 tournaments before, right? Russia's won a major. There's no development for him. George doesn't really need much development. When he joined the team, he was already shitting on every team in North America and South America, um, in the major qualifier, which was a LAN. So, what the fuck? I mean, he can learn a little bit, I'm sure. He's getting resources he's never had, I guess. But, like, how much is that actually helping him at this point? It seems like diminishing returns, in my opinion. Um, so he's not gaining much. Wiz did get significantly better, did join the main roster, got put in a shitty position, and we don't know where he's going to be the next couple of months. We don't know how well he'll perform. I imagine not very well, but we'll see. And again, that's not because I don't think Wiz is a good player. I just think, dude, look at all the shit that they've gone through. Like, is he really going to be able to step it up moving forward? Like, there's not many other opportunities to play, guys. We really have the Showdown and I am Dallas, and that's kind of it. Like, there's nothing else to play. Um, Not many opportunities to prove himself, and I don't think even if he does play well, it'll be enough for people to say that they want Wiz over Junior. So that'll probably happen soon. Um, Junior obviously isn't developing on fucking EG Black. He joined the team and was immediately shitting on tier 2 teams because that's what he does. He's already got his tier 1 experience. He's not developing by being on EG Black at all. EG White, it's the same fucking core as it's always been. How much are they developing at this point? They're not even playing matches all that much anymore. Like, Momo has been great, I guess. I don't know if we've developed him or if he was just good to begin with, you know. Um, it's just strange to me. It's all very strange to me, and I don't know. Yeah, it's why I don't like the refresh move. I just think it's like you join one of these EG Black or EG White teams with the expectation that if you perform well, you could get bumped up to the main roster, and really that percent chance of you getting bumped up is much slimmer than it should be. Because even if you're good enough, even if the roster spot opens up that you would fit, you won't necessarily get the move up. Um, and in my opinion, I think EG needs to decide whether or not they want to be a developmental team, very similar to how Complexity is, where they're not claiming to want to win the major, right? But they are developing talent, right? They are developing these players, right? They are committing to these players. Like, look, as bad as Complexity has been over the past like 2 year span or whatever the fuck, their roster has not changed all that much. Like, they replaced Junior with Halzerg, but like the rest of their roster really hasn't changed all that much. They picked up Grim, but they've been committed to the players, and that's how you develop players. It sounds counterintuitive, right? You would think if the players are not performing well, you have to kick them. That's not the case. You want them to work through those issues. That's how you improve. And if that's what I don't understand. Does EG want to be a team that wants to develop players, or do they want to be a team that wins tournaments? You can't do. I don't want to say you can't do both. I'd say you certainly can't do both in North America right now. You definitely can't do it in North America right now. I'm not saying that top teams don't develop talent, right? Typically, you'll have a top team has some type of young player who's a fragger or something who can develop and become even better, right? Your bit from Navi or whatnot. But the point is, it's not they're developing one player. EG is trying to develop multiple players on their team. You can't develop multiple players on one team at once and try to win tournaments at the same time. It's just not going to happen, especially from North America, where it's just such a weak region in general right now. It's just not possible. So, anyways, that's my long discussion on why I don't like the refresh move, at least in principle. Um, the principle of it. Um, yeah, and then in terms of just like, well, let's go to the outro and close out here. Well, actually, I don't want to put this as my outro because I think people will just kind of skip. But what I do want to say is, guys, I've seen some pretty fucking ridiculous roster. Well, you know what? Let me just funny. I don't know. Ridiculous roster. I don't know. How do I phrase this? Fan fan roster choices are crazy. Now I know what you're thinking. Fusion, you're a fan. How does this make any fucking sense? Oh, I'm moving my background. How does this make any fucking sense? You're just criticizing, you're joking about yourself. And to that I say you're right. I've openly said in this video, I don't think there's a clear-cut move for this team. There's no obvious solution to who to put onto this fucking team to make it work. There is none. And it's because this team is failing for more reasons than just gameplay. Um, and that's why it's difficult to place. And because they have so many options. They have players on EG Black and EG White who both deserve opportunity in the main roster. That's why it's difficult to decide who should be on the roster and who shouldn't be on the roster, guys. And if you don't think Breeze should be on the chopping block, you're out your fucking mind. He should be on the chopping block. He should be very close to the chopping block because the dude has not been performing very well. He's been very inconsistent. In fact, I think he even was one of the worst performers recently at Pro League. I think he played IHC and he was the worst performer against IHC or some shit like that. I don't know. Crazy. But look, everyone's on the chopping block in theory. Okay, none of these players are performing well enough. And so, with all that being said, I've seen some fucking ludicrous roster options. I have seen people claim, I have seen people claim that Stanislaw should join the main roster not as an in-game leader, but as a rifler, as a fragger. I don't think I need to say anything else or give, frankly, any other examples other than that one to just show how fucking ludicrous some of these fucking roster options have been. Like, guys, I mean, do I even need to explain why that would just be a dumb fucking decision? Other than the obvious fact that Stanislaw is not a tier 1 fragger, has never been a tier 1 fragger. He is not the guy you look to get kills. Ever. Ever. He was considered a decent in-game leader that can frag. If you ever have to put that many words before say can frag, they aren't inherently a good fragger. It just means they're decent for their role. And mind you, in-game leaders typically are not great fraggers. Like, not to mention the fact that Stanislaus' game style, like the way he plays, is just the biggest bait game style ever. The dude baits everybody. That's how he plays. He is a baiter. He baits. And as much as you could claim, oh yeah, but he's good at it. Yeah, in tier 2 NA he's good at it. But if fucking Stanislaw is baiting Breeze into a bomb site, I would lose my fucking mind. So, no, I don't want Stanislaw to join the roster as a fragger. I love Stanislaw. Well, I don't know that I can say that. I don't like how he treated EG or how that roster went in 2021. Was it 2021? 2020? Don't fucking remember. Stockholm Major. That time period. Didn't like it. Thought he was shit. Thought he couldn't even IGL. It looked horrible. Wasn't motivated. Clearly. I don't have anything against Stanislaw. But we're not fucking putting Stanislaw on the roster to be a fragger. If you thought the fragging was bad before, you just made it fucking worse. So stop it. Can you guys at least, when you're making roster options and you're just spewing them out into the internet, can you at least think of some logic, some roles, how they play, who are they as a player, as a person? Like, can you just use some fucking logic, please? That's all I'm saying. Use some logic. Because listen, like I said, there's many options you could go. Many, many, many options. Many, many, many options. You could say Pwn alone for Wiz and put Ben Leet as the in-game leader and get rid of Nealon. We need to do something different. Sure, that's plausible. Get rid of Breeze. Put in fucking, I don't know, George and bring Momo onto the roster and fucking put Junior into the roster and do all this other. You can do so many fucking things with this roster. So many things. My point is, okay. My point is, use some logic, please. Don't just start spewing shit for the sake of spewing shit, cause it's just dumb. Like it's just dumb. I'm sorry. I'm just rambling at this point. But again, I just don't understand some people. And yeah, look, there's no 100% roster move that fits every situation perfectly and would be perfect for the team. Like, you know, in terms of keeping the idea of being a North American team and developing talent and dealing from your blueprint project, right? Like, there is no clear cut move within the EG Black and EG White rosters to move into the main roster and interchange as you would like. There is no clear cut, obvious answer. There isn't. Um, you could go so many different ways with it, and if you think Junior is way leagues above everybody else, you're wrong. Wiz was dominating in Tier 2 North America as well when he got the move up. Pwn alone has been very, very good as well. Like, there is no obvious clear cut option for these roles. Um, you can kind of go multiple different directions with it, which is a cool thing because it means that as fans we get to discuss. However, again, let's use some logic. It'd be much appreciated. We're not putting Stanislaw as a fucking fragger on the team, guys. Let's not get too crazy. You gonna bring in Rush too? We're gonna just become EG Black. That was another thing too. People will be like, the main roster is shit. EG Black is better. EG Black should be playing. And it's like, yeah, I get it. Like, you're probably right. At that moment in time, EG Black was probably better than the main roster during the major qualifier, or the qualifier for the major qualifier. Yeah, they probably were. Also, EG Black wasn't dealing with nearly the pressure that the main roster was. And if for 1 second you tell me that EG Black's roster as constructed, when you look at you take out all the horrible context and the bad performances and everything, you just take away all the context and you just look at the rosters and you go, okay, this is the EG Black roster and their coach, and this is the EG main roster and their coach. You cannot sit there and tell me that the EG Black roster has more talent than the EG main roster. You're telling me that Nealon, Automatic, Breeze, HexT, and Wiz are going to get on paper, right? On paper, without context, just looking at the rosters themselves, that roster right there is worse than a roster with Walco, Rush, Stanislaw, George, and I think Junior. Really? Really? Come on. Don't fucking lie to my face. Like, on paper, the main roster is fucking better, guys. It's more talented by far. It is much more talented than any of the other two EG rosters. You want to know why they don't prove it? Because of the shit they've had to deal with over the past month that no other team in the history of Counter-Strike has had to go through. I don't even think Astralis has had to go through the shit that EG has. EG might be worse at developing young players than Astralis, and that fucking says something when Astralis is the worst fucking organization ever at developing young talent. They are so bad at developing young talent, they send their players to retirement. Go ask Bubsky. Moving on. So before we end the episode, let's very briefly, very briefly just talk about the Blast Premier Spring Showdown. Now, there's not really a whole lot to talk about with this. It doesn't even fit on the fucking, it doesn't even fit on the screen. It doesn't even fit on the screen. All right. Now, there's not a whole lot to talk about here. EG's going to get shit on. I don't have any expectation of EG doing anything in the Spring Showdown. They have given me absolutely no hope that they will do anything because this believe it or not, this qualifier is stacked and only one team makes it through. And yeah, I don't know if you guys have seen the teams, but like EG is they're gonna get clapped. They have to compete against Team Liquid, Complexity, Furia, MIBR, Pain, Imperial, and Nouns. They are not making it through this qualifier. I don't care what anyone tells me. They're not making it through this qualifier. They're going to get bounced. Don't know against who they're playing first, but I'm sure it'll be one of the better teams, and they'll probably just get bounced instantly. So, at this point, Imperial might even be better than fucking EG. It's that bad. It really is. Yeah. I don't know, man. It's sad. It's really sad. But EG is not going to make it through. They're not going to go to the spring final. If they do and they prove me wrong, uh, by all means, please do. Please. Fucking please. End my suffering. Is it bad that I've almost been happy that EG has not had to play any games because it has given me the opportunity to just not think about the Counter-Strike team in terms of like their performance and whatnot. I still think about them as people because I feel fucking awful for them. But and again, like I've said before, it's the team that I've felt the most emotionally connected to because I create content for them, uh, or about them, not for them, but about them. Um, but it's been nice to just not be depressed over the team and instead just direct all my anger and hatred towards the organization, which I hope continues because I hate this organization in terms of what they've become compared to what they used to be. By the way, um, Alex Garfield made another tweet regarding EG about how sad and disheartened he is over everything that they've become. So it's just one more thing to add it onto the pile. Add it onto the pile. Keep adding it, baby. Please, 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 guys. Please, I am begging. I've never I have never wanted bad news to come out against my favorite esports organization or just team in general ever before to this degree. But at this point, I just feel like there's no other way for change to happen. So that's where I'm at. With all that being said, guys, I've been talking for an hour and 18 minutes, and I need to get ready for bed. So, um, thank you all for listening. I appreciate it, as always. Thank you for the support. I should probably just change this to outro. So, yeah, like I was saying, guys, thank you for watching. I really appreciate the support I've gotten recently. It's been fantastic. Honestly, I never expected to even get really any. I know it sounds like, oh, dude, what are you getting so excited for? It's like, dude, listen, when I started this podcast, I was expecting to get like at best 3 views for an entire year. I don't mean like 3 views total for an entire year. I just mean like 3 views per video, maybe. You know what I mean? So, Getting the amount of views that I've been getting has been very, very happy, or very nice for me. Sorry, I just don't understand English anymore, I guess. It's been very, very nice for me to see that, and I've been very appreciative of the support. Even though, guys, I know tough times for EG fans, as it's always been. It seems like this past, year or so, for at least for the CS team, it's been a couple years. Um, so hopefully things get better in the future. It feels like every fucking 6 months I say it can't get worse than this, and we always seem to find a way. So, shit, it can't get worse than this, can it? Please, please, it can't get worse than this, can it? Because I'm dying on the inside. I'm just dying on the inside. Um, I don't know if I'm gonna go to IM Dallas, guys. It's kind of dependent upon. I don't know. Maybe if the team shows some good gameplay in Spring Showdown, maybe I'll think about it a little bit more. I don't know if I'm gonna go. I just took a flight to California. I spent money on that. Like I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it, but yeah, we'll see. And I don't know if you guys want me to go. I guess I'll obviously take your input into consideration. But yeah, um, kind of crazy. But you know how it is, guys. It's just another day in the life of being an EG fan. So hopefully you guys are, you know, supporting other teams in other games or real life sports or something to keep you excited and keep you happy because it ain't gonna come from this team. But yeah, man. Hopefully things start turning around for us soon. In the next, half a year or so, and maybe there's something we can get excited about for once. Um, and yeah, without further ado, guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, as always. And I'll hopefully catch you guys next week with Current. Current was having some trouble with his PC, so wasn't able to get him on the pod this time. But hopefully we're able to do it again next week. And yeah, so get back to a little bit more of a regular schedule compared to where we've been at. So um, yeah, thanks for listening, guys.